This is lesson 651 in China, the Ming Dynasty, 1368 to 1644. That's a long time. And we've got a history quote from a Chinese person, Confucius, who says, "Study the past if you would define the future." Having control over your future, the direction of your life and the life of your society, is only possible if you study the past. That's why we're taking this course. The Mongols are no more. Remember, when we left China last unit, we left with the Mongols in charge. They had a dynasty of conquest in China called the Yuan Dynasty, a Mongol dynasty. But in 1368, that Mongol Yuan military dynasty was finally overthrown, and there was a new emperor in town, Ming Hongwu. The Ming martial emperor took over. He named the new dynasty after himself, Ming. And Ming Hongwu established the goal of this new Ming dynasty: restore China's power and traditions. And the Ming dynasty would last until 1644, almost 300 years. Expansion was the name of the game. Ming Hongwu reinstated Confucianism, and he brought back those civil service exams that Confucius advocated. He also strengthened the Great Wall for the safety and security of China, and he restored the Grand Canal for the wealth and prosperity of China. And we've talked about both of these infrastructures. Political expansion. During the Ming Dynasty, China extended its rule west into Mongolia, south into Vietnam, and in the north, they made peace with the piecemeal remains of Mongol nomads. Economic expansion. The Ming Dynasty also brought China into a long period of economic expansion. Population increased, agriculture expanded, infrastructure improved, trade and industry expanded, and of course, art and literature flourished, as they always do in good economic times. The son makes a name for himself. Ming Hongwu died in 1398, and his son, Yong became emperor. And he wanted to establish himself as legitimate, so he built big monuments. He restored Chinese rule over Vietnam. Yong architects designed the modern city of Beijing. And Yong made Beijing the Chinese capital in the year 1421. Yong died in 1424 and was buried in his new city with his wife and 16 concubines. The capital, Beijing, was known as the Forbidden City because nobody but the emperor's household was allowed inside. The Emperor Yong sponsored long-distance voyages. Yong sponsored a series of naval voyages, and these were really big promotional expeditions for China. And these expeditions traveled all over the Indian Ocean, all of Southeast Asia, India, and as far as Eastern Africa. They were led by Zheng He. He was an admiral, diplomat, explorer, Muslim, and eunuch. Pretty colorful guy. Admiral Zheng He led several massive Chinese trading fleet expeditions all the way to East Africa between 1405 and 1433. Here is Zheng He leading an expedition fleet of huge treasure ships. And what's really interesting is the navigator in the foreground reading a compass, a Chinese invention. Zheng He's treasure ships were enormous. They were much bigger than the Caravels that European explorers and traders favored. The voyages of Zheng He visited modern-day Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, India, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Ethiopia. In ships 5 times as long as the European Caravels. Here's a picture for comparison. Fast facts on Chinese sea vessels. Zheng He's fleet carried 28,000 men. His biggest ship was 440 feet long. That's longer than a football field, and it's also wider than half a football field. He carried in it giraffes from Africa, and he covered more than 31,000 miles. Around the Earth at the equator is only 24,300. But then something happened. The Ming Dynasty turned China inward. The Emperor Yong died, and the voyages had brought enormous profits to China. But it made some traditionalists upset. It's not very Confucian to go exploring, and trading is a dirty job. There was a feeling that China already produced everything it needed, and trade and relations with the outside world was deemed unimportant. But perhaps the biggest reason to stop outward expansion through these trading expeditions was this. They needed to turn the resources toward repelling invading Huns. The money you save from not building gigantic ships and paying 28,000 sailors can buy a lot of wall. The new emperor dismantled the fleet, and he burned all of Zheng He's journals soon after his death. The Chinese withdrawal from trade created a vacuum that the Portuguese were eager to fill. In 1514, Portuguese traders arrived in China. The Ming emperor thought that they were an unimportant, rather smelly, and unusually barbarian people, and their behavior outraged the emperor, and he made them withdraw to a nearby Chinese island. But it was okay. Missionaries smoothed things over, the Jesuits, and the Chinese were impressed by European eyeglasses. The missionaries were impressed by the availability of books and Chinese architecture. As always, the Ming Dynasty experienced a fall part of their dynastic cycle. Late in the life of the empire, a series of weak emperors caused rampant corruption. Corrupt governments put in high taxes, which angered the peasants. And finally, the social and political situation was not helped by declining crop yields because of bad weather, just as the dynastic cycle predicts. And this made the peasants even angrier. The end of the Ming. There was a peasant revolt. It began in central China and it spread to the rest of China. And by 1644, peasants captured the capital, Beijing. And the last Ming emperor hanged himself from a tree in the garden. A group from the north came in and formed the next dynasty, the Qing.